My first comic book ever was Uncanny X-Men 248. It was the first issue that Jim Lee did the art for, and it scared the hell out of me. It was unbelievably dark. There's a character who has their spinal column ripped out, and I was like 7 years old. It was way too gnarly for me at the time. So I hid it on top of the fridge in my kitchen, and would still like think about it over and over. And I would go and I would pull the book off and I would check to see if it was as bad as I remembered it being. And over time, just kind of like got more and more used to it. There's so much stuff available for people, and we're seeing, you know, a constant reinvention, like new twists on kind of like old tropes or old standards. One of the first books that comes to mind is Stray Dogs, a book that came out last year. It's Silence of the Lambs by way of like Milo and Otis. It looks like Don Bluth style animation, like old school Disney, but it is like a gnarly book about a serial killer who is murdering women and stealing their dogs, and the dogs have no short-term memory, so none of them know how they got to the master's house. And it's such a comic booky idea. It's such a cool pitch for comics. And we've seen horror stories before, and we've seen serial killer stories before, but to see it framed as this kind of like, you know, really wholesome, like old school Disney style animation, like that's such an awesome reinvention of kind of an old standard. And we're seeing so much more of that. And again, that comics have been so much more democratized that it's easier now than ever to publish your own comics, whether it's online or self-publishing stuff. There's always new stuff coming out. We're never going to see the end of comics for sure.
My first memory of comics or of reading a comic would be when I was young, maybe like 3 or 4 years old. My grandparents bought me the first like collected editions of Ninja Turtles. I was born at just the right time to catch like Turtles Mania is what everybody called it. The peak of, you know, TV shows, toys, movies are about to drop. Like Ninja Turtles were this giant pop culture phenomenon. And so my grandparents, being the sweet old people that they were like, hey, let's buy this guy this book that we see on shelves that's got Ninja Turtles on it. Not realizing that the Ninja Turtle comics from the 80s were not for kids in the way that the TV show was and the toys were and so on and so forth. Very much based in like ninja action and violence, sci-fi action and violence. So I wasn't really at a reading age, it was more just pictures for me, but that to my memory is my first experience with comic books.
For anyone who says that comics is disposable, it's not an important medium, what do you say to those people?
Fuck off. The notion, and it's funny because that's largely an American notion, and I don't know if that's because they got so popular so fast here in the States, or if that's because like kind of the origin of comics was that they are this kind of throwaway, or at least the origin of comics as we know them were this kind of like, hey, this is this nickel and dime thing that you give to a kid so they shut up at the grocery store or whatever, or the market or what have you. The kid destroys it while they're reading it, and then it's on to the next thing. But comic books are nowadays, like they're reaching, it's American folklore. Like it's something that we've given the world, and now the whole rest of the world participates. In the same way that America gave the world, you know, cinema, really, or Hollywood movies, blah, blah, whatever way you want to phrase it. I would argue that we're largely responsible for where comics are at now, but unfortunately, we don't view them as that important. We don't view them as important as the rest of the world does. Japan, France, Spain, like they all look at comics as a legit form of art and storytelling, and they're treated the same way that movies are treated, that novels are treated, that, you know, art in museums is treated. And we're getting there, slowly but surely. But I would, you know, for a lot of people, as unfortunate as this may be, a lot of people can't attach value to things until there's financial value attached to things. So for those people, I would say when Action Comics #1, the first appearance of Superman, is selling for $3.3 million, that's a pretty serious thing.
Ready?
Ready.
Corey.
Hey gang, this is Aaron and Zach from Now or Never Comics. We are located at 1055 F Street, downtown in San Diego. We've got a little bit of everything. Comics, toys, video games, vintage paperbacks, records, calendars, posters, all sorts of nerdy nonsense. We've got new comics every Wednesday. We've got subscription services. We've got vintage comics, back issues. We've got graded books. We've got toys, new and vintage. We've got too much stuff to list.
We've got all of it.
We've got all of it. If you're looking for nerdy stuff, we've got it. We got a bunch of nerdy comics. We've got some